What if everything you thought you knew about the justice system was a lie? What if the very people sworn to protect you were hiding a dark secret, one that could shatter everything? In a courtroom, a black defendant is laughed at by cops, mocked for a crime he didn't commit. But as the case unravels, the laughter fades. What happens next will leave you stunned. This man isn't just any defendant. He's someone no one saw coming. The FBI director. The system you trust is about to come crashing down, but the real question is, who can you trust now? Stay tuned, because the truth is about to expose a corruption so deep, it could change everything you thought you knew. Hit the like button if you're ready to uncover the secrets buried in this story, and don't forget to subscribe to see how far the truth will go. It started on a rainy Tuesday morning. Gray clouds hung low over a sleepy corner of Richmond, Virginia. Two squad cars pulled into the parking lot of a small hardware store. Inside, an employee had called 911, reporting a black man acting suspicious. He was browsing paintbrushes. One officer, Sergeant Cole, stepped in with a smirk already tugging at his lips. The other, Officer Bradley, followed closely, hand resting casually on his holster. The man stood calm, tall, wearing a navy suit and polished shoes. His skin was dark, his posture commanding. He turned slowly as they approached. "Sir," Cole said, voice laced with practiced superiority, "store employee says you have been loitering." The man raised one eyebrow. "I am shopping," he replied. His tone was calm, almost amused. Bradley snorted. "Oh, so now shopping is a felony?" he said, chuckling. Cole joined in, voice louder. "Mind stepping outside, sir? We need to ask you a few questions." A few customers watched from the aisles, phones in hand, already recording. The man gave a small sigh and nodded. He walked out ahead of them, unbothered. Outside, the rain had picked up. Water streaked down the front of his suit, but he did not flinch. "What is your name?" Cole asked, pulling out his notepad. The man stared at him for a long moment. Then spoke. "Director Samuel Greyson." Both officers paused. Bradley scoffed. "Director of what?" "The paintbrush division." Greyson reached into his jacket slowly, carefully. Cole's hand dropped to his gun. But Greyson only pulled out a sleek black wallet. He flipped it open. Inside was a federal badge. Not just any badge. The Golden Eagle crest of the FBI. "FBI Director Samuel Greyson," he repeated. Silence fell over the lot. Bradley blinked. Cole's mouth opened slightly. The rain poured harder. "I was here," Greyson continued, voice steel cold, "on an inspection route. One of our surveillance teams flagged this store last week." Cole swallowed. You are the director of the FBI." Greyson nodded once. "And I have just been profiled, laughed at, and nearly drawn on." He looked them over. Neither officer spoke. Their confidence had drained completely. People from inside the store had come out now. Some were still filming. Greyson turned slowly to the crowd. "This is what power looks like in your eyes," he said. "Until the badge comes out." A young woman in a raincoat whispered, "He is the director." Bradley stammered. We were just doing our job, sir." Greyson locked eyes with him. "Your job?" he asked. "I wonder what part of your training involves mockery." More silence. More rain. Cole tried to speak but stopped himself. Greyson glanced at the flashing body cams on both officers. "They are recording, correct?" "Yes, sir," Cole muttered. Greyson nodded again. "Good." Then he pulled out a sleek satellite phone from his jacket. Dialed a number. "Agent Callahan," he said, his tone suddenly sharp. "This is Director Greyson." I need internal affairs briefed within the next hour. Cole's face went pale. Bradley stepped back, almost tripping on the curb. Greyson's voice cut through the storm. There are cameras. Witnesses. Body cams. And a federal badge that was just laughed at. He ended the call without another word. Then turned back to the officers. Do you know how many complaints we get about departments like yours? Neither of them answered. Greyson stepped closer. Men like you stain the oath. His voice was calm, but behind it was something colder. Something dangerous. He leaned in slightly. I will not forget your faces. A flash of lightning cracked above them. In that brief second of white light, Cole looked almost sick. Greyson adjusted his cuffs. The rain had soaked him, but he stood unaffected. You may return to your car now, Sergeant, he said softly. And pray the footage is not worse than what I already saw. He walked away without waiting for a response. His shoes splashed quietly through puddles. Behind him, Cole and Bradley stood frozen. Cameras still rolling. Rain still falling. And the FBI director disappeared into the mist. The officers did not move. Not at first. They stood there, soaked, the weight of what had just happened sinking into their bones. Cole finally turned toward Bradley. His lips parted, but no words came. Bradley looked down at his boots, then back at the people still filming. One man muttered, "That clip is going viral before dinner." Greyson's black government SUV appeared at the far end of the lot. A driver in a crisp suit stepped out and opened the rear door. Without looking back, Greyson got in. The door shut with a soft, deliberate click. The SUV pulled away slowly, gliding through the fog. In its wake, the silence became unbearable. Bradley broke it. Do you think he meant it? Cole exhaled. He is the director of the FBI, Brad. He does not make empty threats. They walked slowly back to their cruiser, heads low, hearts pounding. Inside the hardware store, the clerk who had made the call was now staring at the footage on his phone. He looked confused. Afraid. I did not know who he was, he said to no one in particular. An elderly woman snapped, "You should not have needed to know who he was." By sunset, the footage had spread. Across news stations. Social media. Even the evening broadcast on national TV. Two local officers confront FBI Director Samuel Greyson outside Richmond hardware store. Racial profiling or tragic mistake? Director Greyson speaks out, "The badge means nothing if it is ignored until proven." Headlines exploded. Within 24 hours, the department's internal affairs team announced an emergency review. Reporters flooded the precinct. Bradley's wife stopped answering her phone. Cole's teenage daughter came home crying after school. And then, the knock came. At 5:02 a.m. Sharp. Measured. Cole opened the door in his bathrobe. Two federal agents stood there. Badges out. Eyes unreadable. "Sergeant Cole." He nodded. "By order of the director, you are being placed on administrative leave pending investigation." Bradley received the same knock 12 minutes later. He tried to argue. But the agent said nothing. Only handed him a sealed envelope. Federal Notice of Inquiry. In D.C., behind closed doors, Greyson watched the footage again. Alone. The body cam feed. The parking lot footage. The moment they laughed. The shift in their faces when the badge came out. He rewound that moment. Twice. Paused it. Zoomed in. Their expressions. So confident 1 second. Then raw panic. He leaned back in his leather chair. Rain tapped against the high windows. He whispered to himself. They always laugh before they understand. A knock at his door. "Come in," he said. His assistant entered. "There is more, sir." A second store clerk filed a statement this morning. Greyson raised an eyebrow. "She says the officers made jokes before they approached you." The assistant hesitated. One of them said, "Hope he does not pull a Sharpton on us." Greyson's jaw tensed. "Is it in writing?" "Yes, sir." "Send it to the ethics board. And notify DOJ oversight." The assistant nodded and left. Greyson stood. Walked to the window. Watched the Capitol lights shimmer in the mist. The storm was not over. It was just beginning. By noon the next day, headlines had changed tone. FBI Director files official ethics complaint against Richmond officers. Justice Department opens investigation into local PD patterns. Cole sat at his kitchen table, staring at his cold coffee. His phone buzzed every few minutes. Texts. Emails. Missed calls from reporters. From unknown numbers. From his own union rep. Bradley paced in his garage, whispering into his cell phone. "No, I do not know what they are going to do. Yes, I am serious." It was him. His voice cracked. His hands shook. Back in D.C., Greyson was already 3 steps ahead. His office walls now displayed a new case board. Photographs. Complaint files. Officer records from across the region. Red strings connected incidents that had once been buried. Ignored. Excused. Now they burned under bright white light. "Run every complaint through the profiling database," he told his team. "I want patterns. Names. Dates. And I want them now." He paused. Then added, "Do not be afraid to dig." His team got to work. In Richmond, pressure mounted. The mayor held a press conference. "We are cooperating fully with the Department of Justice. We do not condone misconduct." The police chief shifted uncomfortably beside her. He had known Cole for 15 years. He had promoted him twice. Now his own badge felt heavier than ever. That night, Cole received a visitor. Not an agent. Not a lawyer. It was his daughter. 14 years old. Tears in her eyes. "Dad," she whispered. "Why did you do that to him?" He tried to speak. Words failed. Bradley, meanwhile, found his front yard covered in signs. One read, "FBI sees you." Another, "The badge does not hide the truth." Reporters staked out the block. Neighbors whispered. His world was shrinking. Back in D.C., Greyson stood in a secure conference room. He was not alone. A panel of high-ranking officials stared back at him. Senators. Federal auditors. Oversight chairs. "You are pushing hard, Samuel," one of them said. Greyson nodded. "I have to. And if it brings down half the state's precincts." He met their eyes. "Then maybe it is time they fell." The room fell quiet. The gravity was real now. He had become more than a symbol. He was a force. And Richmond was only the beginning. Later that week, a sealed envelope landed on Cole's doorstep. He opened it with trembling fingers. It was not from the local precinct. It was stamped directly from the bureau. Notice of pending federal charges. Bradley got the same. A second envelope arrived the next day. It contained printed screenshots. Comments. Jokes. Private group chats from their department. Leaked. Exposed. The messages were filled with slurs. Mockery. Laughing emojis next to real complaints. The public saw everything. Outrage followed. The department began to splinter. Lawsuits piled in. Greyson stood before the press again. This time, flanked by DOJ attorneys. This is not about one store. One moment. One badge. This is about a culture. A sickness. One we will cut out. He looked straight into the cameras. I was profiled. Laughed at. Nearly threatened. And I am the FBI director. He paused. If this happens to me, imagine what happens to those without a badge. Silence. Then a wave of questions. The storm was spreading. And the city was about to face the consequences. Within 48 hours, the governor called an emergency session. State legislators, rattled and restless, gathered behind closed doors. Public trust was crumbling. Protests swelled across downtown Richmond. Marches. Chants. Posters with Greyson's photo beside the words, he showed them the badge. They showed him their truth. In neighborhoods once quiet, people knocked door to door with petitions. Civil rights groups organized. Federal investigators flew in. Every officer's body cam from the last 6 months was pulled for review. Internal Affairs set up mobile command posts. They were not just looking at Cole and Bradley anymore. They were opening every file with fingerprints that matched their pattern. Meanwhile, Cole sat with his lawyer in a sterile room. A two-way mirror reflected his tired eyes back at him. The federal prosecutor slid a folder across the table. Your department's group chat, she said calmly. Page after page of racist jokes. Mocking photos. Text threads. Cole wiped his hands on his jeans. They were clammy. Cold. You can cooperate, she said. Or you can burn with the rest of them. Across town, Bradley was doing the same. His lawyer whispered urgently, you do not want to be the last one to speak. The last one always gets the longest sentence. He stared blankly at the table. Thought of the laughter. The smirk. The arrogance that now felt like poison in his throat. He nodded. I will talk, he whispered. Back in D.C., Greyson reviewed the depositions. He did not flinch. He had read hundreds. Thousands. But these felt personal. One document caught his eye. A complaint from 3 years ago. A young black teacher pulled over. Same 2 officers. Same pattern. Same dismissive language in the report. Greyson highlighted it. Then leaned forward. This is not just systemic, he said to his analyst. It is engineered. Rehearsed. The analyst frowned. Sir, there may be a senior command cover-up. Greyson looked up slowly. How far up? Chief of police. Possibly higher. The patterns suggest an effort to bury certain complaints. Greyson stood. Then we go higher. He walked out of the office. Straight into a waiting motorcade. Destination, Richmond. This time, it would not be a quiet visit. This time, the city would feel the full weight of his badge. By the time he arrived, the courthouse was surrounded. Media vans. Protesters. Officers standing in nervous lines. Some with shame on their faces. Others with something darker in their eyes. Greyson stepped out of the black SUV. Silence spread like a wave. He walked through the crowd. Unprotected. Unbothered. Each step echoed louder than chants. At the top of the courthouse steps, he turned and faced the crowd. No one is above the law, he said. Not loudly. But the words carried like thunder. He raised his badge. Then lowered it. No more shadows, he said. No more masks. The courtroom doors opened behind him. He stepped inside. The real trials were about to begin. And Richmond would never be the same. Inside the courthouse, the air was electric. Rows of reporters whispered into their phones. Every camera lens pointed forward, waiting. In the front row, a mother clutched a photo of her son, a teenager who had filed a complaint years ago. It was ignored. Buried. Now it was Exhibit A. Greyson sat at the government table, posture perfect. Next to him, a U.S. attorney sorted through a thick binder of evidence. The judge entered. All rose. Greyson's eyes did not move. He had seen judges before. But this one. He watched her closely. An older woman with a sharp gaze and no tolerance for theater. She sat. The room followed. The court will now hear opening statements in United States v. Richmond Police Department, she announced. A quiet gasp rippled through the room. They were not trying two officers. They were trying a system. Greyson folded his hands. Listened. The U.S. attorney stood and cleared his throat. For years, he began, a department meant to protect has instead profiled, mocked, and silenced. He turned toward the jury. You will hear audio. Read transcripts. Watch video from body cams that were never meant to see daylight. You will see what happens when power is left unchecked. The jury was still. Greyson's expression remained unreadable. Then the defense stood. The lawyer for the department tried to sound confident. These are isolated incidents, he said. Unfortunate, yes. But not proof of a corrupt institution. Greyson's jaw tightened. He whispered something to the U.S. attorney beside him. She nodded. Pulled a remote from her briefcase. The screen behind the judge flickered on. Footage played. From Cole's body cam. That Tuesday. The laughter. The dismissiveness. Then the shift. When the badge came out. Gasps filled the courtroom. One juror covered her mouth. Another leaned forward. The footage cut. Then another clip. Bradley in the locker room. Mocking a black driver they stopped weeks earlier. I told him to step out like he was some kind of senator, he joked. Laughter. Slurs. The tape ended. Silence fell again. Then Greyson stood. Without being prompted. The judge let him speak. I did not press charges because I was offended, he said. I pressed them because I was reminded, in 10 slow minutes, what it feels like to be invisible until someone sees your power. He looked directly at Cole, seated behind the defense table. Imagine how many never got the chance to be seen. Cole looked away. The judge nodded slowly. Proceed. For the next 5 hours, witness after witness took the stand. Not all of them were black. A Latino store owner. An Asian college student. Even a white man who said, "They let me go with a warning while the guy next to me was cuffed." Patterns. Layers. Not just bad apples, but a poisoned orchard. Outside, protesters now held candles. A vigil formed at the steps. For the names that did not get headlines. The names still missing from files. Inside, Greyson sat motionless as the prosecution called their next witness. A woman in uniform. A former Richmond officer. She walked slowly to the stand. Her hand trembled as she took the oath. And when she looked at the jury, she said 6 words that made every heart stop. I was told to stay silent. The courtroom froze. Those 6 words hung in the air like smoke after a shot fired. The defense attorney shifted, uncomfortably. The judge leaned slightly forward. Please repeat that, she said. The woman, Officer Lena Morales, swallowed hard. I was told to stay silent. Her voice cracked, but she held steady. Greyson's eyes locked on her. Not with anger. With something closer to respect. The U.S. attorney stepped forward. "Officer Morales, who told you to stay silent?" She took a breath. Then said the name. "Captain Stephen Marks." Murmurs erupted. The judge banged her gavel once. "Order." Greyson's lips pressed into a thin line. Marks. A 20-year veteran. Praised for his leadership. But also the one who lost dozens of misconduct complaints. Morales continued. She spoke of meetings where body cam footage was erased. Of memos that vanished before review. Of subtle threats. "You want your pension, right? You want your family safe." She said it all. The room listened, stunned. The jury scribbled notes furiously. Cole looked like he was going to be sick. Bradley lowered his head into his hands. This was bigger than them now. It had always been bigger. Morales finished her testimony. Her last words. "I joined the force to protect people. But the longer I stayed, the more I was told who counted, and who did not." The U.S. attorney looked to Greyson. He nodded once. The government rested its case. Outside, rain had started again. But the crowd remained. Candle flames flickered in the drizzle. People stood silently, listening through their phones. Inside, the defense scrambled. Their strategy was crumbling. Even their own officers were flipping. That night, news broke. Captain Marks placed on federal watch list. Subpoena issued. Greyson watched the report from his hotel room. He did not smile. Did not relax. He just stared at the screen. At the weight of it all. The cost. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You made your point. Walk away while you can." He stared at it. Unmoved. Then deleted the message. Whoever sent it. They still did not understand. This was never about revenge. It was about reckoning. The next day, the courtroom was at capacity. Everyone knew. Captain Marks was about to take the stand. He entered slowly. Not in uniform. In civilian clothes. Greyson watched him carefully. The man looked smaller now. Less myth. More man. More cornered animal. He was sworn in. The prosecutor approached. "Captain Marks, did you suppress internal complaints?" Silence. The courtroom held its breath. Marks leaned into the mic. His voice low. Cold. "I did what I was told to do." The prosecutor paused. "By whom?" Marks looked toward the back of the room. Then. He spoke a name no one expected. "Chief Delaney." Gasps again. Even Greyson looked up. The chief of police. The top of the chain. The man who had publicly condemned Cole and Bradley just days earlier. Now, his name echoed in accusation. The judge ordered an immediate recess. Federal agents left the room before anyone else. They were already making calls. The dominoes had started to fall. But Greyson knew, this was not the end. This was the first pillar. And the whole structure was about to collapse. Back at the Richmond Police Department, panic spread like wildfire. Chief Delaney's office door slammed shut behind 2 federal agents. Staff watched from the hallway, frozen. No one spoke. No one moved. Inside, Delaney stood with his arms crossed. Calm on the outside. But the twitch in his jaw betrayed him. "We have a warrant," one agent said. They handed him the document. Delaney's eyes skimmed it. Then narrowed. "You are making a mistake," he said. The agent stepped forward. "No, sir. You made the mistake. Years ago." Back in the courthouse, the judge called for an emergency grand jury hearing. Greyson was already briefing the Attorney General's office. Every recorded phone call. Every internal email. Every signature from Delaney on those discarded complaints, they were all being pulled. In real time. The entire command structure was unraveling. By nightfall, news helicopters circled overhead. Breaking: FBI widens corruption probe to include entire Richmond command staff. Greyson watched it unfold from the steps of the courthouse. He was surrounded by reporters again. But this time, he chose to speak. "One thing has always been true," he said into the microphones. "Justice may be slow, but it never forgets." He looked directly into the lens. "To every officer who protected the truth, thank you. To everyone who buried it, we are coming." The next morning, Chief Delaney was arrested. It was quiet. He did not resist. But the footage went viral. Handcuffs. Miranda rights. The very hallway where he used to walk with pride, now echoed with shame. Inside Greyson's D.C. office, the case board was expanding. Not just Richmond. Complaints from other cities were now flooding in. Baltimore. Louisville. Wichita. The same patterns. The same tactics. The same silence. He knew now, Richmond was not the fire. It was just the first flare. This was national. This was structural. This was historic. That night, Greyson sat alone in his office. A photograph sat on his desk. His father. Also a lawman. But one who never got to see the system change. Greyson picked up the photo. Whispered, "We are finally doing it, Dad." Outside his window, the Capitol lights glowed. The city was awake. So was the country. And this time, it was watching. As the weeks passed, the ripple effects from the Richmond case reached far beyond the city's borders. Local law enforcement agencies across the nation began conducting internal audits. Officers were reassigned, investigations launched. Reports of similar abuses in different precincts were suddenly treated as a national crisis. Greyson watched it all from his office, his phone constantly buzzing with updates. But the weight of the work, the constant pressure, began to take its toll. He could no longer just look at the system from the outside. He had become part of it. A driving force. In Richmond, the fallout from Delaney's arrest was far from over. Protesters continued to march, demanding accountability from every corner of the department. Delaney's trial was set to begin in a few weeks, but that was just one piece of the puzzle. More arrests were expected, more revelations were imminent. By now, even the quiet corners of the city were buzzing with conversations about the scandal. The mayor called an emergency press conference. "We are committed to rebuilding the trust of our community," she said, but the words felt hollow. The damage had already been done. Cole and Bradley, once praised as heroes, now walked through a city that no longer saw them as such. Their reputations lay in tatters. Cole had resigned from the force, unable to handle the shame. Bradley, however, still held on to his job, though his every move was scrutinized. He attended mandatory therapy sessions, but the anger and resentment festered. He'd been on the inside, part of the very system that Greyson was tearing apart. But even as the storm raged around them, a small, simmering doubt began to grow in Bradley's chest. Had he done enough? Had he been blind to what was right in front of him all along? Back in Washington, Greyson's investigation deepened. New evidence poured in, internal memos from various police departments, connections to political figures, and ties to massive city contracts that had gone unquestioned for years. Every new lead seemed to lead to the same dark heart. Corruption. The system that had once seemed so straightforward was now a maze of deceit. And Greyson, despite his position, found himself questioning the very thing he had dedicated his life to. He had always believed in the justice system, but now it felt as though it had failed him, too. Could anything truly change, or was the corruption too ingrained to root out? One morning, a familiar face walked into his office. It was Officer Morales, the one who had spoken out. Greyson looked up from his desk, startled. "Officer Morales," he said, standing. "I wanted to thank you," she said quietly. Her words were sincere, but there was something else in her eyes, something that suggested she knew the full cost of her actions. "The system needs more people like you," Greyson said, his voice steady. She shook her head. "No, sir. The system needs to be fixed." Greyson paused. She was right. But fixing it would take more than just exposing the rot at the top. It would take the courage to challenge the very foundation it was built on. "We've got a long road ahead," he said quietly. She nodded. "Longer than we thought." And so, the battle continued. With every arrest, with every new revelation, the walls of the old system started to crack. But just as the light at the end of the tunnel seemed within reach, Greyson received a call that sent a chill through him. The message was simple. There were more names. More officers. More cities. And this time, the corruption reached higher than he could have ever imagined. Greyson's face went pale as he listened. The storm wasn't over. It had only just begun. Greyson leaned back in his chair, the weight of the new information pressing heavily on his shoulders. More names. More cities. The corruption was a spiderweb that stretched far beyond anything he could have imagined. For a moment, he sat in silence. The phone call had been a warning, but it also felt like the final test. He could walk away, disappear into the background. He had the power, the connections, the leverage to back off and let someone else clean up the mess. But the face of Officer Morales flashed in his mind. The protesters outside the courthouse. The countless victims whose voices had been drowned out for too long. The truth was, he had already crossed the point of no return. There was no going back. He grabbed his coat and headed out of the office, determination setting in. The next day, Greyson stood before the media, surrounded by the cameras. This time, he didn't need to raise his voice. "Today marks the beginning of the end," he said, his voice steady. "We have exposed the system. But this is not just about punishment. It's about reform. It's about rebuilding trust, and it's about ensuring that what happened here never happens again." Behind him, a new wave of leadership was beginning to form. Officer Morales, now promoted, stood alongside him. Others, like former officers from Richmond and beyond, began to step forward, ready to take up the mantle of change. In the months that followed, the investigations continued. More officers were held accountable, but the focus shifted to systemic reform. The Department of Justice worked with community groups to build new guidelines, new training methods, and more transparent oversight. It was a long, painful process. But slowly, the public began to believe in change. And with every small victory, Greyson's faith in the possibility of a just system was restored. As for the corrupt officers, they faced trial after trial. Delaney, Marks, Cole, and Bradley all paid the price for their actions. But it was the system itself that faced the most scrutiny. The nation watched, learning the lessons of Richmond, and ultimately demanding accountability in ways they never had before. One afternoon, as Greyson sat at his desk, he received a letter. It was from the mother of the young man whose complaint had first sparked the investigation. She thanked him, not just for his work, but for his persistence. "For you, it was about a case. For us, it was about a life." Greyson sat quietly, staring at the words for a long time. This wasn't just about the badges. It was about everything that came with them, the weight, the responsibility, the duty to protect, to serve, to truly see the people they vowed to protect. And as he put the letter down, a sense of peace washed over him. He had fought a battle that few could understand, but it was one worth fighting. And the work was not done. But the foundation had been laid. And with that, the story of corruption and cover-ups finally closed its chapter. The truth had come out. And now, the true work of healing began.